Hi everyone, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads. In this Better Beader episode, I want to talk a little bit about a question that's come up from some of our customers when they contact us here at PotomacBeads. Customer service is our customer care department that answers a lot of these questions that you have that often lead to Better Beader episodes. If you ever have questions or want to know a little bit more details about the products, make sure to comment below and let us know things that you would love to see these Better Beaders episodes about. This episode is going to be about Czech glass and the ways that Czech glass is manufactured, the coatings that go on it, and then the steps that happen after the pressing fashion of the traditional Czech glass method. So Czech glass beads are awesome. You're looking at them in every subscription box, every other project, whether or not you're using round duos or quad bows. If you're using tabletop buttons, you're using just faceted rounds and regular fire polished. It all starts as these massive glass rods that you see. The glass rods are then fed through machines. When you're looking at the glass rods, they have a machine that they're going to feed through, and you're going to see in this hopper at the top, it's put in, and once it's put into the hopper that's sitting right behind me here, the glass rods are fed in that area. You can see the machine that's going to bring the glass rods down through the machine, and they're going to go into a press. The Czech glass beads are pressed, meaning that there is a mold that is pressed into the machine in order to get the bead shape. That glass rod starts at the top, and all of the beads are going to come out of this pressing process that we're talking about today. So we're not talking about blown glass or Venetian glass. We're talking specifically about traditional Czech glass that's done through the pressing fashion. Through that fashion, after the pressing, it can become a multitude of different finishes and different styles, but it's all going to start out right here with these pressing machines. When going into the machine, the hot glass is going to go through a mold that is pictured above. You can see the round mold, and the beads right here in that turquoise color are what comes out of that pressing machine. They already have their hole in them. That's not something that's drilled in after the fact. And this process creates that bead, but you can still see it's still all in one piece, basically. However, the glass that's around the actual press itself is very, very thin. To crack this apart, as it cracks, you can see a little bit as it's kind of dumping out into the bin, it will crack into pieces, and you're usually left with just the beads. In order to get rid of all of the other portions that have come about from that pressing action, all of that other extra blue glass that you can see on the sides of the round beads there, it needs to go through a tumbling process. The tumbling process is going to be to separate that waste from the actual beads, as well as smooth out a little bit of a seam that's always going to occur as the mold comes together to create the project. You're always going to have a little bit of that seam that you can see sometimes more than others in some of the different Czech style beads. So the life of the bead starts as that glass rod, then goes through the pressing machine, going through that mold. After it comes out of the pressing machine, like I showed you in the previous picture, it is often still connected to other glass because it's kind of molten hot, it all sticks together, and that needs to be broken apart. You can see this tumbling room here behind me is where it's going to go and tumble in usually like little pieces of rubber or cork that is going to get that sharp edge filed down around that seam of the bead where it comes together, as well as the little pieces. From this product, after here, a bead can be ready to go. So if I have just plain round beads that came out of the machine, they're ready to go, and you're ready to see them. These round beads, after the tumbling process, ready to go, strung, and they come right to you. However, what happens if you want to put a coating on the glass, or you want to have it table cut, or you want to coat it to look like a pearl, or maybe even vacuum coat it to look like a metal? There's a lot of processes that can happen after this. So at this tumbling step, your beads can be finished and ready to go, or they can go on to next processes and to become another style of Czech beads. One of the next steps is faceting. So the option is there either before the coating or after the coating to facet the bead. Most beads go directly from the press to actually faceting. Now these beads here get lined up on a tray. This is kind of insane to think. And this employee is going through loading them onto the trays, lined up individually, and then putting them basically to a grinding wheel. That grinding wheel is going to create those facets or those cuts that are in the bead. Now, sometimes the molds may have pre-existing ridges or cuts in them. This fire polish practice of faceting the bead is really to get kind of that sharp look to it. When these are grinded down and have those edges and those points that are put to them, they're going to need to go into another step or another process. After they are faceted, they're going to go back into a kiln to be fire polished. The faceting effect usually leaves the glass a little bit cloudy, and putting them back into the kiln or back into the oven is going to allow them to get their brilliant shine. Most of the faceted beads that you're going to be thinking of right now are those translucent beads. They have a nice shine, a nice luster, or even opaques. Those have to go back into a kiln to fire polish. So once the beads are fire polished here, they are going to, or faceted here, they're going to go back into the oven to get that final step of that fire polishing. You can see here they're loaded onto trays once more, so they go from the individual component to in a bucket to the tumbler that tumbles the pieces apart from one another. Then they go to the faceting process. Then they go back in the kiln. To go back into the kiln, they go on trays that have a powder coating so they don't stick together. And then after this process, they need to be washed and strung one more time. Super labor intensive. So this is going to be how you get the bead coating that you like or the bead finish that you like of that nice fire polished glass. The faceting can also happen to get another classification of Czech glass, which is going to be table cut beads. Table cut beads are done in the same fashion as the faceting, again grinding down the glass, except this, if you think about it, is a table that it's being cut on. So here are some beads that are going to be table cut. You may think about this for faceted cup buttons or table cut buttons. All of these beads are laid on these trays, and then a grinding wheel comes down on top of them, and you can grind to a certain level. These beads here would have been pressed, then they were tumbled, then they were coated to get a Picasso look that's going to then be grinded off by that table cut practice. Basically, they get put on trays like this, laid so they're sitting evenly, and then the grinding wheel will get lowered on top of them to create that beautiful, my favorite Czech look of that table cut version. So on our many trips to the Czech Republic, going to different factories as well as homes, like the previous picture that you saw of people that are still doing this in little huts, basically in little garages or sheds in the back of their yard. There's also a lot of scientific methodology that goes into the Czech glass. This here is going to be one way to do coatings. You can see that the technician is going through and he is measuring out different coatings to coat the process, and then it almost goes into like a pot of spaghetti. It gets tossed in the coatings, which can happen again right after the tumbler. It can happen right after the table cut, or it can even happen sometimes after fire polish. Usually the coating process is going to happen prior to those final steps. That it'll get coated after going through the press and the tumble, and then it'll go to the fire polishing or to the actual table cut. Again, the steps kind of can be reversed in some of that to get different effects on the glass in different measures. In addition to coating in this style here, there's also vacuum coating, as well as Czech glass pearls that start out as the individual bead coming out of the tumbler and then are sent to a pearl coating facility as well. So you're getting a dip coat over and over and over again. So you can either do the spaghetti pot style, or you can go ahead, string them, and do lots and lots and lots of dipping. Almost thinking like layers of a candle is going to be the way that the Czech glass layers are put onto the pearls. So when talking about Czech glass, it's more fun to look at it than it is to actually talk about it. When you're looking at the glass, there are basically three different categories that you're going to look at: pressed beads, which are going to refer to ones that are just kind of pressed. Then you have your fire polished beads that are going to have that nice faceted round cut. And then you generally have your table cut beads, which are going to have a section that has a flat edge generally. You can see where that table cut action is occurring. There's tons of different versions of coatings that can be done, of things that can be applied after the fact, of additional methods that are used, like the etching effect, that are done after the production. One thing that people often have questions about is, well, how do 2-hole beads get their 2 holes? The molds are made with the hole in the location and the type that you need. So the iris duos, for example, here are made that the mold itself has 2 holes. One side is going to have that flat and it's coming together and has the seam around the edges as you're creating them. So the molds can have 2 sides, one flat side, one rounded side as you're working with them and putting them into the machine. You can also see that Czech glass comes in a ton of different shapes, sizes, varieties, pretty much endless. Some things that can make it a little bit hard for the manufacturing product are sharp edges and sharp turns, like the Ava bead. Those are done by a hand press rather than the machine press, which is still that hot glass, but it's going to be a much more labor-intensive process with somebody standing right over it. The coatings then are, here I broke an Ava bead so you could see. The coatings then are applied to the exterior of the glass. So in the life of an Eva bead, it's going to go through a hand pressing machine. Then after that hand pressing machine, it's going to be tumbled. Then after the tumbler, it's going to be coated. When it comes to things that are table cut, again, this is going to go through my button here. It's going to be completely rounded normally, as you're going to see. And then that flat, shiny edge there, you can see where the coating has come off. So it came out of the process, it was tumbled, it was coated, and then as one of the final steps, it went to get grinded down on that table cutting machine. Fire polish then, same deal, you're going to have those cuts. And how do they get the swirls in the glass? That's going to be used by mixing canes together as they drop in to the actual hopper at the top of the press. And then of course you can go in and get your Czech rounds. So say I was coating this bead here with that 2-tone of amber. Again, that's going to be a combination of glass rods. And I can coat and coat and coat and coat and coat. The pearl coating process is awesome. Nathan has a video that shows some of these manufacturing processes, and the pearl coating is super labor intensive. Lots and lots and lots of dips and coats and science behind that of how to get it to stay on the actual bead when you're looking at it. So the Czech way of manufacturing is kind of awesome. It's super labor intensive. It's really, really hard to think, wow, I can get this whole package of leaves here for, $4 or $5, and the amount of labor and time that it took to make all of these is just kind of insane to me. So we will continue bringing you great Czech glass in all of these different forms, whether or not it's pressed, fire polished, or table cut, and all of the different coatings and steps that go along with it, whether or not you want the Picasso coating, a yellow paint going on here, or even the Picasso in the different tones of Picasso, all different basically chemicals and paints mixed together to get you different styles and different coatings on the exterior of the glass. I love thinking about the fact that the glass all starts out as these glass rods, and then it can go so many different ways and so many different directions, all from that one material, coming through that top of the hopper, coming through and making the beads, and then after the bead comes out of that hopper, like those turquoise round beads that we were looking at, they can get faceted, they can get fire polish. Then after that faceting, they could get a coating on them. They could also be used for a full coating if they wanted to have a full coating or a metallic on top. So once again, the idea of these Better Beader episodes is to make you a better beader, more informed about your craft, more informed about the items you're purchasing, and more informed about the processes that go into creating for you to be able to create your finished product, whether or not you're using Czech glass in any forms or fashions in your designs. If you want to, you can also comment below, and then I really, really encourage you to look at that description. We have some manufacturing YouTube videos showing you more in depth the processes that are used to create this awesome Czech glass. Remember, if you want to, you can always check out our supply at PotomacBeads.com as well as .eu to see those great Czech options. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully this Better Beader episode taught you some things about the manufacturing process of the glass that you love. Happy beading, everyone, and thanks again for watching.